Welcome to Fort Worth Innovates, a show about innovation, research, entrepreneurship, and startups in Panther City. My name is Cameron Cushman, and I'm the host of this podcast that brings you the stories of the people that are putting our city on the map as a leader in innovation, with the help of the Fort Worth-Tarrant County Innovation Partnership. My guest today is John Goff, a private investor, real estate developer, and philanthropist, who also serves as the chairman of the board of the Fort Worth-Tarrant County Innovation Partnership. He began his career in real estate in Fort Worth in the 1980s, eventually co-founding Crescent Real Estate with Richard Rainwater in the early 1990s. He sold Crescent in 2007 for $6.5 billion and then reacquired it in 2009. He has also invested in public securities, private equity, and distressed debt in a variety of industries, leading to the formation of Goff Capital Partners in 1998. He's been the driving force behind many local real estate developments, including the Ritz-Carlton in Dallas, the Canyon Ranch Luxury Wellness Spa and Salon, and the Crescent Hotel and Development in Fort Worth's Cultural District. He's been inducted into numerous business Hall of Fames in Fort Worth and around the state. John, welcome to the Fort Worth Innovates podcast.
Thank you, Cameron. Great to join you this morning.
So, John, I just want to jump right in. You have been a part of the Texas A&M Fort Worth campus story and the development really from the beginning. Can you kind of quickly remind us how these efforts got started?
It was in the height of COVID. I got a call from our mayor at the time, Betsy Price, who asked both myself and Elaine Agather to co-head what was called Fort Worth Now, which was basically an entity to help Fort Worth get through the pandemic and then come out stronger economically on the other side. We did a number of things. One very important thing is we had a study done by, we were able to get done for free by a big consulting firm. And they basically critiqued the city for us, told us everything that was going right, what was going wrong. And the number one thing that stood out to us was that we were the largest city in the United States without a tier one research university. And we thought, wow, that's a tall order to try to make happen. But that was the genesis of the idea of trying to attract a major institution into the city. And I can go into I'll go ahead and go into a bit of the detail of how it happened with A&M. Look, we looked at University of Texas, and University of Texas has already claimed Arlington, and they also have a big campus in Dallas. A&M had a law school here, and it was a couple years prior to this point in time that I had just a cold call from the dean of the law school, Bobby Audier. And Bobby called and said, "Hey, I just want to meet you, find out, let you know what we're doing at the university and the law school." And I said, "Great." So I met with him, and one of the things I learned in that meeting, and this was again prior to the COVID pandemic, was that A&M had not only a great law school that was growing in rankings here in the city, but it also had a physical presence beyond just that one building. So there were about 4 blocks in what was kind of a blighted part of downtown that A&M controlled. And I thought, this is really an interesting setup, and I think a very attractive opportunity to try to get A&M to move into the city in a big way. So I called John Sharp, totally cold called, never met the man in my life. He was chancellor of A&M at the time, and set up a meeting. We flew down, Betsy Price, myself, and a few others from the city flew down and met with him. And we pitched this idea of a major campus. And he looked at me and said, "I'm going to do this."
And that's all it took, huh? Just a cold call, and he said, "I'm going to do it." Well, and he probably knew that you knew what you were talking about because of your background in real estate development. So what was the reaction when, after he said, let's do it, what came next?
Well, there was a lot of work and a lot of back and forth, trying to define what this campus could be, trying to define the scope, and also, obviously, there's a lot of capital that has to be raised to build a campus of this size and scope. And it was really a unique opportunity. If you go back to, I think it's important to look at A&M's history. A&M is, obviously, A&M stands for agriculture and mechanical, and it dates all the way back to the Morrill Act that was signed by Abraham Lincoln back in the 1860s. And what that did is it provided every state a grant of land based upon how many senators and representatives they had. And so Texas was granted a certain amount of acreage, and that was the genesis of what the sale of that land funded the genesis of A&M. And the purpose of A&M and what I think the Morrill Act and Abraham Lincoln were really looking to was to provide access for education, a very high quality education for all the workforce of a state. And that's what really led to the creation of A&M. And so it's a perfect fit here in our city to give a wonderful education access to our very fast growing population.
I didn't think we'd go all the way back to Abraham Lincoln on this episode, but thanks, John.
Well,
That's a great history, and yes, and I think it does make sense when you really think about the fact that A&M was not really here in Fort Worth in any significant way except for the law school, and so to double down on that, I think made a lot of sense for the university, the system, and of course for Fort Worth. So you get this moving down a path of working with Chancellor Sharp and the A&M system to sort of expand the law school. But then how did the Fort Worth and Tarrant County Innovation Partnership come to be? And where did that focus on innovation originate?
well, there was a transition between Mayor Price and Maddie Parker as mayor. And we felt a need to keep this sort of independent entity engaged with A&M, with the city, the county, and the citizens. And so there was this new entity created, which was basically the successor to Fort Worth now. And we called it Fort Worth-Tarrant County Innovation Partnership. It's a mouthful, but it's got a simple mission, and that's to make sure this campus gets built and it meets the needs of the city and it maximizes all of the attributes that A&M has to offer. And it also engage with our community, not just the citizens from an educational standpoint, but also industry. So we're sort of the connector, the facilitator that exists here to make sure this campus gets built and it meets all these needs.
I love that. And yeah, that definitely makes sense as the mission. What impact do you hope to have outside of just connecting the dots in some of these innovations and corporations and of course a large university? Where do you see this going in the future?
Well, if you think about the incredible research that A&M has and getting a variety of aspects of that research here on site in Fort Worth and having that engage with our industry that's here today and also attract new industry, it's amazing what the results could be. So just as a small example, there was one day we were having a meeting of a number of A&M professors and deans in our office, and that was in one conference room. In another conference room, there was a board meeting going on of a company that I had invested in. And it was by happenstance in the hallway that I introduced the head of the visual arts school at A&M with the CEO of this company. This company was based in Seattle. The company was having difficulty finding enough trained and talented people for its business, which was in video game design. And through that interaction, that company decided to relocate because A&M assured them that they could generate the type of talent that they need to hire in that company. Fort Worth would have never been on the map to attract video game design, and this is one of the dominant firms in the industry. But it was through that interaction that we had a corporate relocation, and they're here today, and they have students at A&M that are studying, and they'll come out with a extremely high-paying job when they graduate.
What a cool example. Yeah, and we hope to feature that work of the visualization lab and that program, and potentially some of the companies that are working in and around that in future episodes. So thanks for teeing that up for us and highlighting that. And you mentioned, one of the what Daryl Heath called on episode 2 that we did, one of the hubs of focus for the partnership. There are 7 of these hubs. And can you kind of describe to us how these hubs came to be and how you think they'll have a long lasting impact on Fort Worth and Tarrant County?
Well, the hubs, cover things from healthcare, aerospace, agriculture, and food innovation, um, workforce development and extended learning, entrepreneurship, media and entertainment. And so for each of these, we have expertise from the city, from industry, that serves as, call it a mini board, to help connect the expertise that is at A&M with the needs of our industry here in Fort Worth. So it could be workforce development, it could be research, it could be any number of things. But these hubs serve as the linkage between industry and the expertise at A&M.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when Daryl described it, it really made sense as to how they were thinking about organizing just the many things that the Texas A&M system does and can do around very key strategic areas, both for Fort Worth and the region, but also for the A&M system. So I thought it was a great way to kind of think through that organization and really try to drive innovation. So I want to go back to something that you mentioned about the initial report in Fort Worth now about why having a large university like Texas A&M Fort Worth, like the Texas A&M system, why that was integral to the innovation and the economic growth of a city like Fort Worth. Can you kind of tell us why that was such a big deal, not only for the consultants, but also for what came next in the Fort Worth Now partnership that ultimately ended up leading to Texas A&M Fort Worth?
Well, every great city is defined first and foremost by its institutions, and great universities often fill that role. And in fact, when we were looking at the design of this campus and the scope and what it was really going to be, we took a variety of people from A&M and our small entity, and we toured the country and we looked at best in class. So we went to MIT, we went to University of Pennsylvania, and we looked at these campuses that provide a linkage between a student body, expertise from the university, and industry. And we tried to take best in class design and apply that here. And so I think what we will find is that we have a campus setup and kind of a blank swath of downtown that is going to be filled not only with expertise out of A&M teaching Fort Worth students in a variety of areas, but also you're going to have companies come and want to have a presence either on campus or nearby to engage with the student body so that they have, a pipeline of great talent to come into the company, but also to engage with all the research talent that A&M has. And, we found this in spades when we looked at a number of these examples in the country, but, we had a blank template. So we were able to pick and choose from a lot of really good ideas to come up with what we're creating here. And it was out of that really gave rise to this concept of having the hubs.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I love that you guys did the work to go look at what was working in other cities. You obviously have a long career in real estate development and properties around the country. Um, when you think about this as an innovation district, as these several blocks that Texas A&M Fort Worth is developing into an innovation district, what do you see from the real estate development perspective as the impact that that's going to have on Fort Worth?
Well, it'll be huge. I think it's interesting to think back on what this part of downtown was once upon a time. And if you saw the show, Taylor Sheridan show 1883, one of the opening scenes was basically this area of town, which was called Hell's Half Acre. And that is taking a huge turn from what it was, well over 100 years ago to what it's going to be. But I think what you're going to find is that having an institution like A&M and all this expertise is going to create housing, retail, hospitality, all kinds of corporate relocations. There's going to be an amazing amount of real estate development that will occur in and around and part of the campus, which is one of the things we're trying to do now as in the Fort Worth-Tarrant County Innovation Partnership is define what this area is physically, how big is it, and then what kind of controls do we want to have on how that land is utilized, because we really want this campus to be a big success, and it could grow well beyond the boundaries of just those original 4 blocks that A&M had. And I fully expect that it will.
Yeah, and I know a part of the idea too is that you put a lot of these people and these institutions together in an area where they can't avoid each other, right? They bump into each other at the coffee shop, at the retail shop, of course, at meetings and things like that. How do you think the design of this innovation district is going to promote that kind of collaboration, that those kind of intentional collisions between smart people, researchers, students, faculty, et cetera?
Well, within the design of the buildings, there's actually space that will be used by companies. They'll be able to rent space that's near, research talent that they need to access, student talent. So there's going to be an integration of corporate users in with the university. And we found in other locations that could be very effective, but also just in close proximity. But I think the other thing that we need to see is that there is a lot of street life and a lot of engagement activity. These buildings aren't big edifices that have, walls around them. They're going to be very open for people to go into and engage. And so I think you're going to have a very interesting mix of students, researchers, professors, and corporate entities that are going to be coming in and collaborating on great ideas and growth. And we're already seeing that, even though the physical buildings aren't built.
Very cool. Yeah. And you can build the buildings all day long, but it's really the people that make the innovation come to life. But you do mention the buildings, and real estate is in your blood. Can you give us a view of what the physical landscape is going to look like in Southeast Fort Worth, this innovation district, in maybe 5 years or 10 years down the road?
Well, I think the architecture is going to be terrific. A&M does a great job of designing and, bringing in architectural talent. Clark Pelly was the architect of the first building that's housing the law school, but also way beyond the law school. That's one notion that I want to take out of the equation. So many people say, well, they're just building a bigger law school. And that's not what's happening here. It's way beyond the law school. The law school is very important and will be an important component, but it's one of many components that will be housed here. So I think when I look at it as a developer, there's going to be great restaurants, hotel assets, probably office buildings, certainly housing, both for students, professors, etc., all intermixed within this larger campus footprint. But I think there's even bigger opportunities, and some of the things we're looking at is right across from the railroad tracks is the Butler housing project, which is being repurposed. So there's a big swath of land available there, which who knows, that could potentially be a component of the campus. Way too early to say, but it is definitely within our sights and scope of thinking big and what it could be. The other thing I would tell you is that the fact that this campus is being built is attracting a lot of attention nationwide. I got a call a few weeks ago from Elon Musk organization wanting to meet with me because they heard about this campus. And when I met with them, I was meeting with the executives of the Boring Company, which is one of Elon's companies. And they bore these, tunnels. They're doing, I think, over 60 miles of tunnels within Vegas. They're doing a big project in Nashville. And the concept was they wanted to show me what the Boring Company does, how cost effective it is. And so my mind races and I start thinking about all the applications of that within this campus. Who knows? Could the campus be connected to the medical center right across, the freeway through, a boring company project? Could it be connected to the Butler place? I think there's all kinds of opportunity, and those are the kinds of things we need to be looking at. This doesn't need to be a distinct footprint of 4 city blocks.
Well, nobody has ever accused you of thinking small, John. That's those are some really amazing ideas and certainly possibilities that are right there in that neighborhood. But most people would think that because there's a freeway and a railroad track that those things are out of reach. But certainly not if you get partners like that involved and if there's the right amount of land and space available. Um, John, you've been involved in many innovative projects in your career. What are some of your favorite innovations that you've helped to bring to life, either as a developer or as an investor or an advisor? What have you helped bring to life that was a game changer?
Well, look, I arrived in Fort Worth in 1981 driving a U-Haul truck with everything I owned. Had little to no money, but I had a great job working for a public accounting firm, KPMG, and it was through my interaction with one of our big clients, which was Richard Rainwater at the Bass family, that gave rise to my investment career. I'm not an innovator that has created necessarily products, but I have uh, been very involved, and I'm very proud of the companies that I've created and all the jobs that have been created as a result. And I see, a lot of happy families that uh, are a product of, a lot of um, great work and people that are engaged in all these companies. So, the first one that I did that started on a yellow pad was Crescent Real Estate. Started from scratch. It was just a basic idea. It was in the teeth of a very deep, difficult real estate recession. So it was a tough time to build that business, but it was the right time because I could buy things very inexpensively, great assets. And that gave rise to a company that, I ultimately sold Morgan Stanley for $6.5 billion, and then was able to buy it back. And today that company is still prospering, based headquartered here in Fort Worth. Beyond that, Crescent Energy is a company that now trades on the New York Stock Exchange that, again, started with an idea here in Fort Worth and grew. And ultimately, we merged the oil and gas assets we had with all of KKR's energy assets. And now we're a, very large New York Stock Exchange energy business that I'm chairman of. So I love building things like this. And then one project I'm very passionate about now is Canyon Ranch, which was an investment we made within Crescent many years ago, but ultimately, and in recent history, I was able to take control of the company because the founders were at an age they needed to sell, and I bought them out. And so I've got this brand that has this incredible history of close to 50 years as a health and wellness innovator. But now, when that's probably one of the most relevant sectors of our economy, is health and wellness. And so we're taking that company and growing it in a lot of ways. And you may have seen the project we're developing outside of Austin, but that will have over $1 billion of real estate on it when we're all done. And it'll be, I think, the best resort and health and wellness center here in the state. And very excited about that. That'll open in September. So all these things I'm passionate about. I love building, and that's how I spend my time.
I love that. Very, very cool. And I love what you're building now, which is this Fort Worth-Tarrant County Innovation Partnership. Um, what do you think a thriving innovation district anchored by Texas A&M Fort Worth will really bring to our city in the long run? If you could look down the line, going beyond the physical assets that you've already talked about, what is this going to look like in 5, 10, maybe 20 years in the future, if you can go that far out?
Well, I think it's going to be a major campus educating a lot of local young people who might not otherwise have the ability to go off to College Station or other, college um, campuses. But right here in the city, they can get best in class education. So That's critical, and that's mission one. I'm a public, I'm a product of a public education. My entire education was, in public schools, and it cost less than $1,000. Actually added it up one day. What total tuition is I paid from start to finish, and it was less than $1,000 in tuition. And I feel like I had a great education. So I want that for a larger swath of our citizens here in Fort Worth to have access to the great school that A&M provides. That's first and foremost. But then there's this engagement. I think we're going to see companies that are uh, thriving off the expertise that A&M offers. I think A&M is finding that attracting really high quality talent as professors and researchers, it's perhaps easier to do in some cases to attract that talent into a city like Fort Worth than it may be to attract them to College Station. So this is an alternative for them to grow specific projects that meet the needs of our the corporations here. If you look at the aerospace industry, for example, Lockheed and Bell Helicopter, there's an enormous amount of expertise here, and there's also a big demand for talent and for innovation. American Airlines, headquartered here in Fort Worth. So I think there's going to be interaction from all these major companies with this campus and with the talent that's housed on campus.
Very good. Well, it's definitely an exciting future, and the building blocks are in place. And I'm certainly excited to see where this is going to go. John, the last question we always ask on our show is, I want to know, what is your favorite innovation in Fort Worth?
I'm going to tell you the thing that I'm most passionate about is the A&M campus. This is going to be something that I want to stay involved in to see it truly launched. And I think it's going to be an innovation that will be with this city forever and will help define it into the future. There is nothing like a great university to define a city. And I've said before that companies can come and go. We saw that with XTO, a wonderful company built here in Fort Worth, consumed a lot of office space in downtown, but it gets acquired by Exxon, and most of that talent and asset base and occupancy is now moved towards Houston. So companies can come and go, but universities stay and grow. Fort Worth has historically been defined as the edge of the West, where the West begins. I think now it's going to be redefined as edge of the best.
I love that. Well, John, thank you so much for joining me today on Fort Worth Innovates. If you like hearing stories about innovation, research, entrepreneurship, and startups in our city, please subscribe, share, and be sure to tell a friend. The more you engage, the more episodes just like this we can bring to you. Fort Worth Innovates is produced by Kendall Rogers. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this podcast, the Fort Worth-Tarrant County Innovation Partnership, who are building an innovation district that we just heard all about, where technology and research combine to build the future, right here, right now.